Let's look at an extraordinary contradiction. We've got a young man with a towering, almost unfathomable intellectual genius who is simultaneously trapped in a state of deep, deep emotional paralysis. Will Hunting's journey, from start to finish, is a literal masterclass in psychological defense mechanisms and the terrifying, magnificent leap required to achieve true intimacy. So we're going to trace this narrative chronologically, unpacking exactly how a mind capable of solving the world's most complex equations completely struggles to solve the basic mathematics of human connection. And this quote right here really hits the nail on the head. Sean Maguire tells Will, "But you've never looked at a woman and been totally vulnerable." That establishes the central tension of Will's entire character arc. It's that massive gap between what Will knows from reading endless stacks of library books and what he actually feels through lived experience. His mind is a fortress, and he uses his towering intellect as a weapon to just keep everyone at a safe distance. Section 1. The Hidden Genius. Our story begins by exploring Will's intensely bifurcated existence, living in two completely separate realities. You see, on one hand, Will's daily life is grounded in this really gritty reality. He sweeps floors at MIT, gets into street brawls, and spends his nights drinking in South Boston with fiercely loyal friends like Chucky. But on the other hand, he operates on this level of effortless mathematical brilliance. He secretly solves an advanced Fourier system on an MIT hallway chalkboard, a problem that took esteemed professors literally years to prove. And then, when his friends visit a Harvard bar, Will casually, almost effortlessly, dismantles an arrogant Harvard grad student's thesis, publicly humiliating him. Basically, he's a genius pretending to be a nobody. Section 2. The Ultimatum. Because as you can guess, this dual life is completely unsustainable. The narrative shifts when Will's combative, aggressive external persona finally catches up to him in court. Will has a lengthy rap sheet, and in court, he just arrogantly mocks the entire legal system. He actually tries to get a grand theft auto charge thrown out by citing obscure 1798 property rights, and then quotes an 1887 text by Henry Ward Beecher just to defend his right to liberty. It's all a massive joke to him. But this time, he's assaulted a police officer, and the judge is fully ready to lock him up. The major turning point arrives when MIT professor Gerald Lambeau, the guy who discovered Will solving those hallway equations, steps in to bail him out. Lambeau arranges for Will's release under his strict supervision, but it's bound by two non-negotiable conditions. Step 1, weekly advanced combinatorial mathematics sessions with Lambeau. Step 2, mandatory meetings with a therapist. Now, for Will, the complex math is absolute child's play. He breezes right through those proofs. But that second condition, that introduces his ultimate adversary. Therapy requires emotional vulnerability, which is the exact thing Will is completely unequipped to handle. Section 3. Breaking down defenses. Here, Will actively sabotages this therapeutic process to protect the massive walls he's built around his trauma. He systematically drives away 5 different therapists. He literally uses his intellect as a weapon to mock their methods, like faking a trance during a hypnotism session and completely unnerving another clinician with highly inappropriate jokes. Desperate, Professor Lambeau brings Will to his old college roommate, Sean Maguire, a therapist who actually grew up in Will's own South Boston neighborhood. But during their very first session, Will goes straight on the attack. He analyzes a Winslow Homer ripoff painting in Sean's office to aggressively dismantle Sean's life, even suggesting Sean married the wrong woman. He crosses a sacred line by insulting Sean's dead wife, which prompts Sean to physically grab him by the throat. But it's Sean's ultimate park bench reality check that completely disarms Will. He tells Will that despite reading every art book in the world, Will doesn't actually know what it smells like in the Sistine Chapel. He might be able to quote Shakespeare on war, but he's never held his best friend's head as he takes his last breath. He doesn't know what it means to hold a woman's hand in a hospital room for 2 months, knowing visiting hours just don't apply. Sean exposes Will's profound lack of real-world love and loss, effectively stripping away all that intellectual armor. Section 4. The Ideological War. As Will slowly begins to open up to Sean, a bitter battle begins between his 2 mentors over his ultimate destiny. A central ideological conflict erupts between Professor Lambeau and Sean regarding what is actually best for Will's future. The big question is it direction or is it manipulation? You see, Lambeau views Will as an unprecedented resource. He compares him to Einstein and to Ramanujan, the self-taught Indian mathematician whose work completely changed the world. Lambo wants to harness Will's mind for cutting-edge think tanks and the NSA, believing it would be a tragic waste of potential if Will just stays a laborer. Sean, however, prioritizes the boy's broken soul. He argues that intense pressure to perform will only cause Will to break, absolutely insisting that they have to heal his trauma first so Will can figure out what he actually wants for his own life. And Will clearly feels this pressure. When he interviews at the National Security Agency, he brilliantly uses complex socioeconomic logic to mask his terror of responsibility. He outlines this cascading hypothetical scenario. He breaks a code, which leads to bombing a rebel village, which installs a corrupt government to lower oil prices, which ultimately results in his neighborhood buddy getting shipped overseas, taking shrapnel, and returning to find his factory job exported. I mean, it's an incredibly elaborate, genius-level excuse to justify turning down a prestigious job, all because he's terrified to take a real step forward. Section 5. Fear of abandonment. Will's defense mechanisms start having devastating consequences on his personal relationships, specifically with Skylar, the Harvard student he met at the bar. Skylar asks Will to move to California with her when she attends medical school. But instead of embracing this love, Will is seized by pure terror. He is utterly convinced she'll eventually discover his damaged past as an orphan and abandon him. So to preemptively strike, he aggressively reveals his horrific history, that his foster father put cigarettes out on him and stabbed him. When she cries, says she loves him and wants to help, Will brutally tells her he doesn't love her. He rejects her just to ensure she leaves him before he can be abandoned. Chucky intervenes shortly after this. While working a demolition job, Will tells Chucky he just wants to be a laborer in Southie for the rest of his life. Chucky flatly refuses to accept this. He tells Will that he's sitting on a literal winning lottery ticket and is simply too much of a coward to cash it in. Chucky says it's a straight-up insult to the rest of them for Will to waste his potential. He confesses that the best 10 seconds of his day is walking up to Will's door, hoping that Will has simply left without saying goodbye to pursue something greater. It really proves that true loyalty means demanding your friends step up. Section 6. It's not your fault. This brings us to the emotional climax of the story. Will's final psychological breakthrough takes place right back in Sean's office. Sean looks over the state file detailing Will's severe childhood abuse. Will talks about how his alcoholic foster father used to place a wrench, a stick, and a belt on the table and tell Will to choose his punishment. Will chose the wrench out of pure defiance. He has carried the heavy weight of this severe abuse his entire life, completely internalizing it as his own doing. Sean looks at Will and plainly says, "It's not your fault." Will casually agrees, deflecting the comment, but Sean steps closer and repeats it, "It's not your fault." Will tries to brush it off again, but Sean persists. He repeats the exact phrase methodically. Will gets defensive, telling Sean not to mess with him and aggressively shoves him back, but Sean refuses to yield, and it perfectly mirrors the methodical collapse of Will's towering psychological walls. Finally, the fortress breaks. Will completely breaks down crying, weeping in Sean's arms. The deep-seated belief that he was to blame for his abandonment and abuse is finally completely shattered. On Will's 21st birthday, his friends rebuild a car for him. And in that beautiful 10 seconds Chucky hoped for, Chucky walks up to Will's door and finds it utterly empty. Will has packed up his car and bypassed all those lucrative corporate jobs Lambo set up. Instead, he drops a note in Sean's mailbox explaining his absence. It simply reads, "Sorry, I had to go see about a girl." He chooses to drive to California to find Skylar, choosing emotional vulnerability and love over playing it safe. It beautifully mirrors Sean's own famous choice to miss Game 6 of the 1975 World Series to meet his future wife. Will Hunting's true triumph wasn't solving an equation on a chalkboard, it was finding the courage to let his walls down. So it leaves us with this thought. If you held a winning lottery ticket in your mind, would you have the courage to cash it in and face your deepest vulnerabilities?